Enlightenment and non-self, Antman. Dissolving the illusion of ego. Introduction. Among the most profound and transformative teachings of the Buddha is the doctrine of non-self, Antman. While many spiritual traditions place emphasis on the realization of an eternal soul or a higher self, Buddhism challenges this assumption at its very root. The Buddha, through direct experience and deep insight, taught that clinging to the notion of a fixed, independent self is the very cause of suffering. To awaken, therefore, is to see through this illusion, to recognize that what we take as I or mine is merely a composite process of impermanent factors. The connection between enlightenment, Bodhi, and non-self, Antman, is inseparable. One cannot realize awakening without penetrating the truth of selflessness. At the same time, without understanding non-self, enlightenment would remain an abstract concept rather than a lived transformation. To dissolve the illusion of ego is to unlock the boundless freedom of liberation, where clinging, craving, and fear no longer bind the heart. This essay explores the deep relationship between enlightenment and non-self, the philosophical foundations, the experiential practices, the psychological implications, and the practical transformations it brings in daily life. We will also examine how non-self is understood differently across Buddhist traditions, Theravada, Mabina, and Vajrayana, and why this insight continues to be profoundly relevant for modern seekers. 1. The illusion of ego. How we construct the self. Human beings naturally identify with the idea of I. From childhood, we develop a sense of individuality, reinforced by memory, language, and cultural conditioning. We say, I am this body, I am these thoughts, I am this personality. Yet, the Buddha observed that what we call the self is not an independent entity but a collection of 5 aggregates. Skandhas: form, aerope, the physical body; feelings, vedanan, sensations of pleasure, pain, or neutrality; perceptions, san, recognition and labeling of experience; mental formations, sa, kara, thoughts, volitions, and habits; consciousness, vinyaya, the awareness that arises with objects. None of these aggregates alone or together constitutes a permanent self. They arise and pass away moment by moment, like waves on the ocean. Yet ignorance, avidib, compels us to grasp at them as mine or me. This illusion of ego manifests in subtle ways: the pride of identity, the fear of death, the craving for recognition, and the endless cycle of I want and I don't want. It is this delusion that fuels samsara, the endless cycle of birth and death. To Antman, as the key to enlightenment, to awaken, is to see through the illusion of self. The Buddha, upon his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, directly realized that clinging to a permanent self is the root of suffering. His first teaching, the Four Noble Truths, reveals that suffering dukkha arises from craving taha. Craving arises from clinging to the illusion of self. By letting go of this clinging, suffering ceases. The Eightfold Path provides the way to this realization. At the core of this path is insight, vipassana, the clear seeing that all phenomena are impermanent, anicca, unsatisfactory, dukkha, and not self, and that thus enlightenment is not about discovering a hidden, eternal self, but about liberating the mind from the false belief in self altogether. When there is no self to defend, no ego to gratify, and no identity to cling to, one enters the unshakable freedom of nirveb, sen, non-self. In daily experience, the teaching of non-self may seem abstract, but it is intimately tied to our daily experience. Consider moments of deep flow in music, art, sports, or meditation where the sense of I dissolves and only pure presence remains. In such states, one tastes the freedom of selflessness, even if temporarily. Meditative practice deepens this recognition. In mindfulness meditation, practitioners observe thoughts, feelings, and sensations arising and passing. Over time, it becomes clear that none of these phenomena are me. Thoughts come and go like clouds. Feelings shift like weather. The body changes from moment to moment. The recognition that this is not mine, this is not me, this is not myself, is not mere disoffered it, is a lived insight that cuts through suffering. 4. The psychological liberation of a psychological perspective. The belief in a solid self is the root of anxiety and conflict. The ego constantly seeks validation, fears rejection, and clings to control. By contrast, the realization of non-self brings profound psychological freedom, freedom from fear. If there is no fixed self, what is there to defend? Freedom from pride. Without a self, there is no basis for arrogance or comparison. Freedom from clinging. The illusion of possession dissolves when we see that nothing is truly ours. Freedom from despair. Even death loses its sting, for there is no permanent self to die. This is not nihilism, but liberation. The absence of self is not emptiness in the negative sense, but a spaciousness that allows compassion and wisdom to flourish. 5. Non-self across Buddhist traditions. Theravada perspective. In Theravada Buddhism, the emphasis is on direct contemplation of the 5 aggregates. Through Vipassana meditation, practitioners dismantle the illusion of self, leading to liberation, arahantship. The doctrine of Anat is central, pointing out that clinging to any of the aggregates as self leads to suffering. Bimabie perspective. Amaphan Buddhism extends the teaching of non-self into the doctrine of Nyat emptiness, taught by Here, not only the person, but all phenomena are seen as empty of intrinsic existence. This insight leads to the union of wisdom and compassion, as the Bodhisattva realizes that self and others are equally empty, dissolving the boundary between them. See Vajrayana perspective. In Vajrayana, the doctrine of non-self is integrated with tantric methods. The practitioner visualizes the self as a deity, only to dissolve it into emptiness, thus experiencing the illusory nature of identity. The recognition of the mind's empty yet luminous nature is the direct doorway to enlightenment. 6. The paradox of selflessness. Living without a self. A common concern is, if there is no self, then who acts, who feels, who practices? The Buddha addressed this by pointing out that while there is no permanent self, there is still the conventional functioning of the aggregates. Life continues, but without the burden of ego. The enlightened person still eats, speaks, works, and relates, but without the grasping of I and mine. Instead of self-centered action, there arises natural compassion, spontaneous care for all beings, because the barrier of ego has dissolved. Thus to live without a self is not to live in voidness, but in interbeing, a dynamic flow of interconnectedness, where every action resonates with the whole. 7. Practical steps toward realizing non-self. Modern practitioners. The insight into non-self can be cultivated through mindfulness of body and mind, observing phenomena without clinging, contemplation of impermanence, seeing the constant change of all things, inquiry into the self, asking, who am I? And seeing the emptiness of fixed identity. Compassion, practice, expanding identity beyond the ego, embracing others, letting go, releasing attachment to views, possessions, and identities. Over time, these practices shift perception from self-centeredness to openness, from contraction to SPACIOUSNESS.8. The relevance of non-self in modern society in today's world. Ego-driven tendencies manifest in consumerism, competition, nationalism, and social media culture. The pursuit of self-image and validation fuels dissatisfaction and conflict. The Buddhist teaching of non-self offers a radical antidote. If societies embraced selflessness, there would be less greed, less violence, and greater harmony. In personal life, letting go of ego allows for healthier relationships, deeper empathy, and authentic living. Conclusion: enlightenment as the dissolution of ego. Enlightenment is not about gaining something new, but about seeing through what was never real. The illusion of self is the greatest deception, and its dissolution is the greatest liberation. To awaken is to recognize that there is no I separate from the flow of life, only a dance of causes and conditions, arising and passing away. In this realization, fear falls away, clinging ceases, and compassion blossoms. Thus, enlightenment and non-self are two sides of the same truth. To see the self as empty is to awaken. To awaken is to be free from the illusion of self. In this freedom, one does not vanish, but becomes fully alive, embodying wisdom and compassion in every action. The ego dissolves, but love remains. The I disappears, but the whole universe shines forth.